have this creepy man and he's standing in his boxers with no shirt on. He has his finger over his mouth and he's going shh. We also see that there's a mirror facing the bed and the girl that's lying in the bed is dressed as Snow White. If you go to look up the term Snow White in the Epstein library, you will get some results.
There is an account that was put on my radar called Not an Official News Source. And I'll put the link to her Instagram channel down in my description. It's good. I recommend it. But you know how I know she's a good guy? How I know she's on our side? I want you guys to look at this. I have a question for my fellow Goyim cattle. She's one of us, guys. But anyway, in these two clips that you are about to see, she exposes Pam Bondi and then the individual at JP Morgan Chase who helped Jeffrey Epstein build the entire financial infrastructure for his sex trafficking operation. We'll start there with this Snow White mystery. I'm Zach Costello.
Like most people, I was very disturbed by this image, but I think it's important that we dissect it because I believe there may have been some clues left behind. So to get started, we have this stack of money. It says JP Morgan and Chase. We have this creepy man and he's standing in his boxers with no shirt on. He has his finger over his mouth and he's going shh. We also see that there's a mirror facing the bed and the girl that's lying in the bed is dressed as Snow White. If you go to look up the term Snow White in the Epstein library, you will get some results. One of those results is an email exchange between Jess Stolle and Jeffrey Epstein. Jess says to Jeffrey Epstein on July 9th, 2010, "That was fun. Say hi to Snow White." Jeffrey Epstein responded by saying, "What character do you want next?" Now, fun little fact about Jess is that he worked at JP Morgan and Chase between 1990 and 2013. And if you search up his name on Google Images, you'll find an image of him with his finger over his mouth. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking this, but the guy in this painting looks so much like Jess. And Jess did work at JP Morgan and Chase for 34 years. He also emailed Jeffrey Epstein about Snow White. I don't know, guys. What do you think? I think this might be the most genius piece of artwork with the most horrific backstory. It is so powerful. Holy shit.
Okay, so why is this significant? JP Morgan Chase served as Jeffrey Epstein's primary financial institution for 15 years, from 1998 to 2013. Remember that 2013? Ending the same year that James Edward Staley, Jess Staley, and his time ended at JP Morgan. But JP Morgan Chase processed over $1 billion in transactions for Epstein and provided the infrastructure for his sex trafficking operations. And that's per the court case wherein Epstein was convicted. They found major compliance failures in the way the bank serviced Epstein. I want you guys to look at this. This is the internet for the win here. They enabled criminal activity. Despite internal warnings and red flags regarding suspicious cash withdrawals and wire transfers, senior executives at JP Morgan overrode compliance objections at least 4 times over 5 years. The bank facilitated payments to Epstein's victims and co-conspirators. Top-level involvement and cover-up. Former JP Morgan executive Jess Staley, there's the guy right there, maintained an unusually close relationship with Epstein, visiting his properties and exchanging hundreds of messages while Epstein was under house arrest. Internal documents showed that top-level executive Mary, Erduz, I think is how you pronounce that name, was in contact with Epstein also. But then it continues. Legal and financial consequences. JP Morgan paid $290 million to settle a lawsuit with Epstein's victims and $75 million, to settle with the U.S. Virgin Islands in 2023. These settlements and subsequent revelations of a 6-year delay in filing suspicious activity reports after dropping him as a client led to calls for further investigations, including from the U.S. Senate Finance Committee. Okay, the relationship under the investigation with recent developments in 2025 showing continued scrutiny from Congress regarding how the bank's leadership handled the risks associated with Epstein. Okay, so we know that JP Morgan Chase broke banking laws to help Jeffrey Epstein facilitate his sex trafficking operation. And what this girl just linked, she just linked the JP Morgan exec, Jess Staley, to the Snow White mystery. You get your Disney Channel character and you facilitate my illegal bank transactions. Maybe that will help Pam Bondi out a little bit. I don't know if anything is going to help Pam Bondi out. Look at this next video that she put out exposing Pam.
Hi, Pam Bondi. What are you doing with Keith Frankel? I have a couple questions for you, Pam. How much were the acting lessons? Do the Epstein victims that you cried with know that you're friends with Keith Frankel? Why was Keith Frankel and Jeffrey Epstein talking about body boxes on February 10th, 2010? You've read the files, so I'm sure you can tell us. If Jeffrey Epstein was such a monster, Pam, how come Keith went to his house so many times? One thing that was mentioned in the Epstein files is children being trafficked out of Ukraine. Keith Frankel and his family run a children's home that takes children out of Ukraine. You need to cut the shit, Pam. You need to cut the shit.
So it was announced over the weekend that the rest of the Epstein files have been released. Pam Bondi and the DOJ say they have fulfilled their obligation to release what is required per the law. The Epstein files, and I want to show you guys this. The files that were withheld from the public, because there are still some that are withheld, include material subject to deliberative process privilege, work product privilege, and attorney-client privilege. Bondi and then Todd Blanche explained. Does anyone else have just law speak fatigue at this point? They just make up new words as excuses now just to justify hiding all of this stuff from us.